Stop calling it theft, Kyle said, not even looking up from his phone. You're making drama. Sign the papers. For the family. My hand was still on the safe handle. The door hung open, and the shelf inside was bare. Emma stood behind me in the hallway, barefoot, clutching her stuffed rabbit so tight her knuckles went white. I said, "It was Emma's, her inheritance. It's gone." Kyle's eyes flicked past me like I was blocking the TV. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask if our daughter was okay. He just sighed, like I'd ruined his evening. "Rachel," he said, "my mom's declining. We're under pressure. You know that. If you'd just sign the power of attorney, I could manage things." He was calm in a way that didn't fit the moment. That calm is what did it. Not the missing jewelry, not the empty folder. The calm. He already knew. If you've ever been told to endure because you're strong, you'll understand this hit like. So this reaches the right people who are quietly carrying too much. I closed the safe with my palm so Emma wouldn't stare into it again. "Where's your mom?" I asked. "In the living room," Kyle said. "Don't upset her." Marilyn was curled on the couch under a blanket, eyes half-lidded, mouth moving like she was lost in a dream. I'd been living with that performance for months. Kyle said she'd started forgetting things. He said she'd wandered. He said a facility would kill her spirit. He said moving her in was what decent people did. Emma got quieter the week Marilyn arrived. Not moody, quiet like she was practicing not to be noticed. I tried to tell myself it was adjustment. Winter. New routine. But there were little moments that felt off. One afternoon, I came home early and heard Marilyn laughing in the garage, full and sharp. When I opened the door, she snapped back into that foggy act. Emma didn't even look surprised. Then the papers appeared. Kyle left a packet on the kitchen table under a bright yellow sticky note. "Sign so I can help Mom. Love you." I didn't sign. I read. It wasn't just medical decisions. It was financial power of attorney. Authority over accounts, property, anything in my name. When I asked Kyle, his face changed fast. "Why are you acting like I'm a stranger?" he snapped. "I'm your husband." He used that word like it meant I owed him access. I told him I needed time. He said, "Time is what my mom doesn't have." Now, standing in our hallway with Emma's inheritance missing, the timing didn't look like an accident. The heirloom wasn't something I bought. It came from Emma's biological father's side. He died when she was little. His family left her one piece valuable, documented, meant for her adulthood. I'd kept it locked away because a 9-year-old doesn't need that weight. Kyle knew it existed. He'd asked about it more than once. "Have you thought about selling it?" he'd said, casual. "We could invest it for her future. College, you know, for her." He always said for her, but his eyes never went to Emma. I walked into the living room and knelt beside the couch. "Marilyn," I said softly, "did you see anyone go into my office today?" Her eyelids fluttered. "Office?" she murmured. "What office?" Under the blanket, her hand tightened. Not shaky, gripping. Kyle stepped between us. "Rachel, stop interrogating her. I'm asking a question," I said. Marilyn turned her head just enough to look at me. For 1 second, her eyes were too focused, too awake. Then she sighed and whispered, almost kindly, "Don't upset Kyle. He's under so much pressure. You know that." No confusion, no wandering, just a clean instruction. Emma was in the doorway, watching my face like she was taking notes. I didn't confront Kyle again. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. I went to Emma's room and sat on the edge of her bed. "Sweetie," I said, "have you noticed anything strange?" Emma swallowed hard. "I didn't want you mad," she whispered. "I'm not mad," I said. "I need the truth." She stared at her rabbit. "Sometimes she's normal," Emma said. "In the garage, when you're not home. She told me not to tell you. She said it would stress Kyle and that would be my fault." My stomach turned. Emma kept going, quieter. "And today, at the mall, I saw them." I froze. "Who?" "Kyle," she said. And her. But she didn't look sick. She looked fancy, like she was going somewhere nice. Kyle had his hand on her back. I pictured it instantly. The way Kyle's hand had felt on my back when we first met. The way it changed once he thought I was trapped. Emma's voice shook. She saw me. She told me with her eyes not to say anything. A 9-year-old shouldn't know what that kind of silence costs. I hugged Emma, and she didn't cry. She just finally exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for months. That night, I lay in bed next to Kyle and listened to him text in the dark. I didn't look. I didn't ask. I watched the ceiling and made one decision. I wasn't going to fight them with emotion. I was going to fight them with facts. And the first fact I needed was this. If that woman at the mall was Marilyn, then who was the woman sleeping on my couch? If this hit a nerve, tell me in the comments. Have you ever been told to stay quiet for the family when you knew something was wrong? Part 2. Kyle came home that night with a pharmacy bag like a prop. Long day, he said. Mom's appointment ran late. Marilyn was already on the couch, blanket up, eyes glazed. She let out a little sigh when Kyle walked in, like she was relieved her director had arrived. I watched the way Kyle placed the bag on the counter carefully, as if he'd practiced. I watched the way Marilyn's eyes tracked him when she thought no one was looking. Emma stayed close to me. She didn't speak at dinner. She ate like she was trying to disappear. After Emma went to bed, Kyle slid the packet of documents back onto the table and tapped it twice. Just sign, he said. It's the responsible thing. For your mom, I said. For the family, he corrected, like I'd missed the point. I flipped through the pages again, slower this time. The signature lines weren't just for Marilyn's care. They were for broad financial authority. There was even a section that would let him act in the principal's best interest with assets and accounts. My assets. My accounts. Kyle leaned over my shoulder. You don't trust me, he said, voice low, hurt on purpose. I trust Emma, I said. He laughed once, sharp. I'm trying to protect her, too. That word protect hit wrong. Like when someone says, I'm just being honest right before they insult you. I set the packet down. Not tonight. Kyle's face went flat. You're making me the bad guy. I'm making you wait, I said. He pointed toward the living room. My mom doesn't have time for your stubbornness. I looked at Marilyn. Her mouth hung slightly open, like she was asleep, but her fingers were moving under the blanket, rubbing together, counting, waiting. The next morning, I took Emma to school. In the car, she stared out at the snowbanks and said, Mom, are we in trouble? No, I said. Not you. She hesitated. Kyle gets mad when you say no. I swallowed. I know. At the office, I couldn't focus. Every email felt far away. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A notification from our door sensor. Front door opened. Timestamp. 12:14 p.m. Then, front door closed. 12:16 p.m. 2 minutes. I left anyway. I told my manager I had a family emergency. It wasn't even a lie. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked normal. Inside, I walked room to room. Nothing overturned, just the kind of tiny shifts you notice when you live somewhere. Someone had moved through my home like they belonged there. I went straight to the safe. Empty. And the worst part wasn't just the missing heirloom. It was the folder, the appraisal, the documentation that proved where it came from and that it belonged to Emma. Without those papers, the heirloom wasn't just stolen. It could be sold with a clean story. My hands went cold. I called Kyle. He answered on the second ring, annoyed. What? The safe, I said. Emma's heirloom is gone. The paperwork, too. Silence. 1 beat. 2, then not panic, irritation. Rachel, you're spiraling. Are you at home? I asked. No, he said quickly. I'm out with my mom. Doctor stuff. My voice went quieter. Then why are you talking to me like you already know what happened? Kyle's tone hardened. Why are you interrogating me? You're making my life hell. He lowered his voice like he was doing me a favor. Listen, we're family. We handle things internally. Don't call anyone. Don't embarrass us. Embarrass us. Not protect Emma, not find the heirloom. Just don't embarrass us. If you're still here, comment one word, proof, because the moment someone cares more about reputation than your child, you stop arguing and you start documenting. I hung up and went to the living room. Marilyn was on the couch. Of course she was. Blanket, glassy stare, the whole setup. I walked closer. Kyle said you were at an appointment, I said. She blinked at me. Appointment? She murmured. Where was he between 12:14 and 12:16? I asked. Her eyes shifted to the window for half a second like she was checking if anyone could see. Then she sighed. Don't upset him, she said again, softer. He's trying. A broken record with perfect timing. I went into the kitchen and opened the pharmacy bag Kyle had brought home the night before. It wasn't from our local pharmacy. It was from a pharmacy across town, near the interstate right by a jewelry exchange I'd driven past once, and never thought about again. I stood there holding the bag and felt something in me settle. This wasn't confusion. It was a plan. That afternoon, I changed the pickup password at Emma's school. I didn't tell Kyle. I told the office there were family issues, and they didn't ask questions. Then I did something Kyle never expected. I called someone outside the family. I texted an old friend who'd moved into law enforcement, Detective Aaron Blake. We weren't close anymore, but he'd always been the kind of person who listened first. I wrote, I need advice. Something targeted is happening in my house. It involves my child. He replied in under a minute. Call me. Now. Kyle came home and glanced at the kitchen table where the documents sat. You've had time, he said. Sign. I looked at him and smiled, just enough to look compliant. I'm thinking about it, I said. His shoulders relaxed like he'd won. He didn't know I'd already started building a case, and he definitely didn't know I was about to learn the one secret that would change everything. Marilyn wasn't just faking. She might not even be Marilyn. If you want to see how I proved that, subscribe not because you support my channel, but because women don't get warnings. We get evidence. Part 3. Detective Aaron Blake didn't meet me at my house. He met me in a grocery store parking lot and kept his engine running. I'm not here officially, he said. So tell me fast. I told him about the safe, the missing heirloom and paperwork, the door sensor alert, the power of attorney packet Kyle kept pushing, the way Marilyn was sick only when Kyle was watching. Aaron didn't react like I hoped. No shock, just focus. Who knows the safe code? He asked. Kyle and me. He nodded. Then this wasn't random. Whoever did it knew exactly what they wanted. He walked through my house like a guest. He didn't stare at Marilyn. He didn't challenge her. He just noted how calm everything was for a home that had supposedly been broken into. This is a targeted theft, he said quietly in my kitchen. They took the item and the documents. That's resale planning. Resale planning. That night, after Kyle fell asleep, I found the first hard secret. In our office drawer, under warranty papers and an old tax folder, Kyle had printed emails. Jewelry buyers. Private purchase. No questions. Appraisal terms. Dates going back weeks. He'd been researching how to sell something like Emma's heirloom before it disappeared. I took photos and put every sheet back exactly where it was. The next morning, Marilyn sat on the couch with her blanket and her vacant stare. Kyle poured her juice and spoke to her in that soft voice he used when he wanted to look like a good son. Kyle left the room to take a call. Marilyn's eyes sharpened instantly. She looked right at me and said, "You look tired." "No confusion. No drifting," I said. "It's been a week." She gave a tiny smile. "Family takes," she said. "You'll adjust." It was a threat wrapped in advice. I needed someone who'd seen her without Kyle controlling the room. Kyle had mentioned hiring a helper for Marilyn for a little while. The helper disappeared after a few days. I found her number in an old text thread and called from my car during lunch. She didn't let me finish introducing myself. "She's not confused," the woman said flatly. "Not like he told you." My chest tightened. "You're sure?" "I watched her act," she said. When Kyle was home, she'd shuffle and forget. When he left, She'd walk normal, use her phone, complain about the TV. I asked Kyle why he was doing this, and he fired me. Said I was stressing his mom. Did you ever hear them talk about my daughter? I asked. A pause. Then, I heard Kyle say, "Keep the kid quiet." That's what he said. Like your child was a problem to manage. My hands went cold on the steering wheel. After that call, I stopped thinking of this as something happening to me. It was happening to Emma. So I did what I'd been avoiding. I went back to the mall with her. I told Emma we were returning Boots. She didn't argue. She just held my hand the whole way in, like she already knew what we were hunting. We took the same corridor where she'd pulled me behind a pillar the first time. We moved slow. We didn't make eye contact with anyone. We acted normal. Then I saw Kyle. And beside him was the same woman Emma had described. Styled hair, sharp coat, heels, posture straight. Not the couch version, not the lapses. Kyle's hand rested at the small of her back like he owned the moment. Emma's fingers tightened around mine. "That's her," she whispered. They stopped at a jewelry counter with a side desk, private appointment style. A sales associate approached with a smile. "Miss Tessa," the associate said. "Your private counter is ready." Miss Tessa. Kyle flinched like the name had teeth. He turned and scanned the corridor. His eyes hit me, and all the color drained from his face. Tessa's gaze snapped to Emma. For 1 second, her expression turned cold, annoyed, like my child was interrupting her schedule. If you've ever had someone treat your kid's future like an inconvenience, hit like, because that kind of betrayal doesn't heal quietly. Kyle walked toward us fast, too bright. "Rachel," he said, loud enough to sound friendly. "What are you doing here?" "Shopping," I said. "Same as you." The associate looked between us, confused. Kyle forced a laugh. "This is my mom," he said. The associate's smile faltered. Tessa didn't play along. She just stared at Kyle, warning in her eyes. Kyle lowered his voice, teeth tight. "We'll talk at home. Don't do this here." I nodded once. Sure, because I didn't need a scene. I needed confirmation. I took Emma's hand and walked away. I didn't look back, but I felt Kyle's panic behind me like heat. On the drive home, Emma asked, barely audible, "So she's not? Grandma?" "No," I said. "She's not." Emma stared out at the snow and whispered, "She told me not to tell. She said it was for Kyle, for family." That word again, family. I parked in our driveway and sat there for a full minute with the engine off, listening to the silence. Kyle and Tessa had moved a stranger into my home under the label of mother. They'd used guilt to keep me working, paying, and quiet. They'd tried to get legal control with that packet on my table, and when paperwork didn't work fast enough, they took what belonged to my child. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote one line. Tessa is not Marilyn. Then I wrote the next line under it. Now I need them to prove it. And I knew exactly how to make them come back to the safe. Part 4. The next day, I did 3 things, and none of them were loud. First, I met with a lawyer on my lunch break. I told her only what I could prove. My daughter had an inheritance asset. Someone in my home had access, and my husband was pushing for financial power of attorney. The lawyer didn't gasp. She nodded like she'd seen this pattern. "We're going to lock down Emma's inheritance," she said, "and we're going to document that any requests from Kyle Turner are denied." She helped me contact the inheritance administrator and the estate's representative. We added a written note. No transfers, no inquiries, no changes, without my direct verification. Not by spouse. Not by family. Second, I installed cameras legally only in common areas. The hallway leading to my office and the entry points. Nothing in bedrooms, nothing invasive, just enough to see who went where. Third, I made bait. At dinner, with Kyle and Marilyn in the room, I said casually, "I've been thinking about the appraisal paperwork. I might still have another copy in a work folder." Kyle's fork stopped in midair. Marilyn's eyes didn't lift, but her fingers stilled under the blanket. Kyle forced a laugh. "See?" he said. "You're always misplacing things." "Maybe," I said, keeping my voice light. "I'll look this weekend." Kyle nodded too fast. Good. We need to get organized. For the family. For the family. Kyle suddenly suggested he could help with Emma's school pickup. I smiled. The school has a new password, I said, like it was nothing. It's just a safety thing. Kyle's eyes narrowed for half a second. Since when? Since today, I said. He didn't argue. He didn't want to show his hand. But I saw the calculation behind his face, the same calculation I'd seen in Marilyn's eyes. 2 days later, I ran the final piece of the trap. I told Kyle I was leaving early to pick up Emma because her teacher needed to talk. I said it like a normal mom thing, like I was annoyed but calm. Instead, Emma was already safe. I'd arranged for my friend to meet her at school under the new password and take her to the public library. Quiet, normal, visible. I drove away from the school like I was heading home, then parked down the street and watched the camera feed on my phone. At 3:18 p.m., the front door opened. Kyle stepped inside first, moving fast, not calling my name, not checking on Marilyn's condition, just straight into action. Tessa came in behind him. Not shuffling, not confused, no blanket, no act. She walked like she owned my hallway. They didn't even go to the living room. They went straight to my office. Kyle crouched at the safe and entered the code with muscle memory. Tessa stood watch, head tilted, like she was listening for my car. Kyle opened the safe and cursed under his breath. Tessa hissed, "Where is it?" Kyle snapped. She moved it. Tessa's voice sharpened. "You told me she'd have a second set of papers." "I thought she did," Kyle said. "She said she did." Tessa leaned closer, low and urgent. "The buyer's waiting. We can't stall again. Buyer. Not for Emma. Not for college. Not for family. Buyer." Kyle yanked open drawers. Tessa moved through my office like she'd lived there, flipping folders, pulling out envelopes, scanning for words. Then Kyle said the thing I needed on record. "If we don't find it," he muttered, "we'll make her sign. One way or another." Tessa didn't argue. She just said, "Hurry." Kyle grabbed the power of attorney packet from the kitchen table and shoved it into his bag like it was a tool. They headed for the door, and then Aaron and 2 uniformed officers stepped into the entryway. Kyle froze like the floor had turned to ice. Tessa's face rearranged instantly. Her shoulders hunched, her mouth softened. She reached for the act weak, confused, harmless. "I'm sorry," she said in a trembling voice. I'm not well." One of the officers lifted a hand. "Ma'am," he said. "What's your name?" Tessa hesitated a beat too long. Aaron didn't raise his voice. "Tessa," he said, calm. "We heard you at the mall. We have video and audio in this home. Don't perform." Kyle's eyes shot to the corner of the hallway where the camera sat, small and quiet. He looked at me like I'd betrayed him, like I owed him a warning before I protected my daughter. "This is my wife," he said to the officers, voice shaking with anger. She's overreacting. She's unstable." Aaron looked at me. "Rachel," he said, "is your daughter safe?" "Yes," I said. The officers separated them. Tessa finally dropped the weak voice. Her eyes turned hard. "You think you won," she hissed at me. "You don't even know where it is." And she was right about one thing. I didn't have Emma's heirloom back yet. All I had was proof of the plan, proof of the target, and proof that the word family had been their favorite disguise. Kyle and Tessa were taken out through my front door. And in the sudden quiet, I realized the last fight wasn't catching them. The last fight was getting Emma's heirloom back before it disappeared for good. What do you think happened next? Did Kyle already sell it, or did he hide it somewhere close? Drop your guess in the comments, because the next part is where the truth gets ugly. Part 5. They didn't find the heirloom on Kyle or Tessa that day. That was the first thing the officer told me after they cleared the house. "We have intent," he said. "We have your footage. We have the attempted access. But the item itself, no." Kyle's words from the camera replayed in my head. The buyer's waiting. If he'd already sold it, Emma might never see it again. That night, Kyle called from a withheld number. I almost didn't answer. Then I thought about court. about timelines, about how predators love silence, so I answered and put it on speaker. His voice sounded tired, like I was supposed to feel sorry. "Rachel," he said, "what you did today was extreme. Stealing from Emma was extreme," I said. He ignored that. "You don't understand what I've been dealing with," he said. "My mom." "Her name is Tessa," I cut in. A pause. Then his tone changed, flatter. "Okay," he said, like he was dropping one mask and reaching for another. "Fine. Tessa. Whatever. But you didn't have to bring cops into this. You could have handled it like a wife. Like a wife. Like my job was to absorb damage quietly and call it loyalty. I'm handling it like a mother," I said. He exhaled hard. "You're destroying our family," he said. "Think about Emma. She needs stability." He said Emma, like he was holding her by the wrist. "She needs safety," I said. "And her inheritance back. Where is it?" Kyle didn't answer. Then he tried the oldest trick he had, guilt. "You're going to make her hate you," he said softly, "for taking her dad away." I stared at the wall, because if I looked at Emma's door, I might break. "My daughter watched you lie to her," I said. "She's not going to blame me for ending it." Kyle's voice rose, sharp now. "Everything I did was for the family. We needed money. You think you're better than everyone because you have a job and I don't." There it was, the real wound, the real motive. Pride wearing a family label. "I'm not better," I said. "I'm just not willing to sell my child." He hung up. The next morning I went back to Aaron. This time, he was official. Case number, forms, statements. He told me what I could do that wasn't emotional. "Get the item flagged," he said. "If it turns up at a jeweler, pawn shop, auction, anywhere reputable, the report helps." So we did exactly that. We provided the case number and the identifying details from memory stone cuts, markings, anything I remembered from the appraisal. We notified local jewelers and the main buying networks Aaron's department worked with. We also alerted the estate representative, so the documentation trail was frozen on their end. 2 days later, Aaron called. "Someone tried to sell it," he said. My knees went weak. I sat down on the kitchen floor without thinking. "Where?" "A buyer reached out to a jeweler outside the city," he said. They used the right words. Private sale. No paperwork. But the jeweler recognized the description from the alert. They stalled and called us. Kyle hadn't been smart enough to stay quiet, or Tessa hadn't been patient enough to wait. Either way, the net held. The heirloom was recovered that afternoon. When Aaron handed it to me in a small evidence bag, it looked smaller than I remembered. Not because it was less valuable, because my brain had turned it into a symbol of everything adults had tried to take from a child. I brought it home and placed it on the table. Emma stood there, rabbit tucked under her arm, staring like she wasn't sure she was allowed to hope. "It's back," I said. She didn't touch it at first. She just looked up at me. "Am I in trouble?" she whispered. My throat tightened. "No," I said. "Not ever." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She just let out one shaky breath and said, so quietly it almost hurt, "So, I didn't do anything wrong." That sentence was the whole story, boiled down to a child-sized truth. I pulled her into my arms. "From start to finish," I said, "you didn't do anything wrong. The adults did. They tried to turn you into a target." Emma pressed her face into my sweater and finally cried. After that, I moved fast. I changed every lock. I reset the garage code. I closed the joint account. I froze my credit. I filed for divorce. I requested a protective order. And I took Emma's heirlooms straight to a bank safe deposit box under her name, with protections my lawyer helped set up so no spouse could touch it. No family emergency could unlock it. No guilt could reach it. I didn't respond with anger. I responded with documentation. The video, the audio, the printed emails, the mall name, the attempted safe access, the phrase "the buyer's waiting." When you lay facts on a table, manipulation has nowhere to hide. Kyle lost the house access. He lost the narrative. And in court, he didn't look like a misunderstood husband trying to help his mom. He looked like a man who used a child's inheritance as a paycheck. The quiet that followed was strange at first. No fake coughing from the couch, no sticky notes demanding signatures, no lectures about being supportive, no pressure to smile while swallowing fear. Just me and Emma and a routine that finally belonged to us. Some nights, Emma still flinches when the doorbell rings. Some mornings, she checks my face before she speaks, like she's making sure the truth is allowed. I tell her the same thing every time. In this house, you don't have to be quiet to be safe. And if you're listening to this and you have someone in your life saying, just endure because family, I need to ask you something. When does family stop being love and start being a weapon? Would you have stayed silent to keep the peace? Or would you have done what I did and risked being called the villain? Tell me in the comments. I read them. And I know someone out there needs your answer more than they need another be strong speech.